that what is the most important thing in the world to you, no one cares.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's out of anything, that I've learned over my career is that you really shouldn't take yourself too seriously at any moment in time because people aren't thinking about you. Well, welcome back to Case Studies. I'm here with Doug Robinson, probably one of my oldest friends. When I think back about I just went on this, I went on our 20th anniversary trip with Brian and Aaron Stevenson. And those guys got married a month after us.
Yeah.
So we've both been married for 20 years, one of my best friends. So we go on this trip and it was just so kind of that saying of it's hard to make old friends. And it was just, it was so fun to just connect. But I was thinking about this podcast with you and we talked about doing it. And when was the first time we met each other?
It has to have been in elementary school.
Yeah, it's got to be 7, 8 years old.
Yeah, super early.
Because sports, it was Providence, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to have been around baseball because baseball was just so special in that little town.
And your dad, I don't know if your dad to me is like a hero because he was like a pillar in the community and he was friends with everybody and he'd be at the ballpark just networking and talking to everybody. So everybody knew your dad.
But it was the same with your dad. You had all these older brothers that were legends. They'd all play, they'd played baseball and football and basketball and all athletic. And I think that was always something that me and you shared was we had these older brothers that had done it for so long that it was so easy. It was there was never a question of what we were going to go do. It's you couldn't wait to get to the ballpark and start playing because we just watched it all the way growing up.
And you knew all the families, you knew the older brothers, what they'd done, who'd excelled where, and your family was always super athletic and mine as well. And it was interesting. My brothers went to Logan High. And my family moved and I went to Mountain Crest. That's rival schools, you know? So that was a big change for me, but always looked up to the Baugh family and your dad. And then I think as we connected, I don't remember the exact time, but it had to be super early. And like you said, probably down at the Providence ballpark, taking care of a field or.
So talk to me about growing up in Cache Valley, because when somebody describes to me hey, what was life like growing up? I'm it was pretty idyllic. I don't know if you could for me, both my parents were married and are still married. Faith was a big part of the community. It was just kind of a very faith-based community, coupled with there's no internet, there's no phones.
No.
So it was a bit of purity, when you look back
it's
now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's what are you going to do today? It's you do your chores and it's we're going to go meet at playing wiffle ball somewhere or play tennis or play basketball or whatever it was. I mean, I remember roller hockey for a little while, whatever. We just did anything.
And even to organize that was phone calls.
Oh yeah.
Give a location and then you just trust.
People would just
you send it out and if you can't find it, you're going to a friend's house.
And if you missed the window, you were chasing.
So fun. So Doug, you're obviously you were always a year older than me.
Still am.
But you excelled in sports. That mattered a lot because you were always 1 year older. Always kind of top of your class, both from a leadership and then also just from a performance in baseball and football. And so it was fun because we'd kind of come together for a year and then separate for a year just on how the sporting seasons went. But I always looked up to you so much from a leadership standpoint. It was just, there was never a time, when you were a sophomore, I still remember you playing varsity as a sophomore. And that's tough to
break into
crack into that group. You know what I mean? You really have to be pretty dynamic. But then when you're a senior, you were a captain on the team. And I remember so much of us coming together had to do with those captains and that those teams were crazy. like those teams, like when you really look back at them, like Mountain Crest and that south side of the valley had the entire spectrum of just life, from farm town, tough,
totally,
rough kids to kind of the city kids, if you will. I don't know if you call Providence or, a city, but
mixing it together.
There was, different socioeconomic breakdown, and to kind of bring all that together, I still remember that was just always something that I admired. And ultimately, like in years later, that was, why I ended up coming and working with you, was those early deposits.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Talk about kind of early leadership lessons, coaches.
Yeah.
How did that shape?
I think those years for all of us are so important. You're starting to define who you are, what you believe, leadership lessons. And there's a lot of things I look back and I'm like, man, I did not understand leadership. But that was the process, this process of becoming, or the process of growing as a leader and learning. So much of who I am today and what I learned came from sports. It was just such a big piece of my life growing up. As you mentioned, that so many lessons. And one day you'll have a book, I'll have a book on, leadership lessons that you learn from youth sports or from, these times of our lives. But the things that you learn, the discipline, the dedication, you're out baling hay one moment with Ramsey Nilsson. I remember that. And then going to football practice right after, and just learning that's just what you did. Had a little lawn care business.
So that was always something I hadn't thought about that until now. You were always stacked with cash, like all the way through high school.
Things were good, bro.
You and your brothers had that business, right? And so you kind of had this template of like, hey, this is what you do. You run this lawn care business, and you had your trailer and you had your mowers.
Think about lawn care as a kid. Like, you go to your neighbors, you go get 10 lawns, they pay you $40, $40 a week or whatever. You can do it in your spare time.
Yeah.
Like, you go make $400 a week.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. You can go on dates. You could do whatever you need to. And the maintenance on it, you got a lawnmower, but it taught me, right? Yeah. Like, I took over some lawns that my brothers had done, and that was actually the first company that I sold, surprisingly enough. Like, we built this business, we took care of lawns. It was flexible with sports schedules, but it was hard work. You got to take the grass, dump it in the trailer, go drop it off, like all the things. You got to take care of your equipment. You got to put oil in it. You've got to gas them up. You've got to get them serviced. All those things, even collections with customers. If they hadn't paid for a little bit, talking to a customer about getting that check or sending an invoice.
Kid.
Yeah. And like, you're like, I'm running this little, small business, but it taught me so many valuable lessons. And I look back and so grateful for my mom. I mean, she'd drive us around with the old Jimmy, 1976 Jimmy with the trailer, and
so you were doing that even before you had your license.
Oh, she drove my brothers around and then drove me around lawn to lawn, and would just sit in the car and read while we would mow lawns until we were old enough to, be able to drive ourselves. But
that's so special.
Have really cool memories of that, and so grateful for my parents' case. I mean, you talked about your parents, my parents, like really blessed and fortunate with just awesome parents, and owe a lot to them. But growing up was awesome. Great parents, great community. Sports were so much fun, working hard. And just before my mission, I ended up selling the lawn care business to a bigger company that had, lawns, and took this book of business.
Who did you sell it to?
Fiafias.
Oh, yeah.
So Fiafias had a big lawn care business. I
think they kind of still do.
Yeah. It's been years, but like sold off this. They paid me for a year worth of lawn mows.
It's amazing.
And I was like, are you kidding me? I don't even have to mow them. I don't even have to mow the lawns, and I'll get paid. And they got the contracts. But it was a huge blessing, and learned so much. So I think between sports and that, it really helped me set a foundation of what are the principles that work.
Yeah.
And it was really hard work, grit, discipline, showing up, first one on the court, last one off the court.
Yeah.
I don't think athletically, what was it that set me apart was I like this really gifted person. I think I outworked a lot of people.
Yeah.
I really do. And I think that was some of the key to success.
You had high EQ too. Like, you were able to navigate coaches. This was something I always admired about you was, and still do to this day. You've got a really good ability to identify what adds value to somebody and just go deliver value. And even with coaches saying, what does this coach really value? He might value hard work, or he might value going hard in practice, or he might value staying late, or, whatever it was. But you were always able to you were kind of always a coach's favorite. And I think the reason
teacher's pet,
but there was guys on the team I remember that would resent it. And I look back now and I'm like, no, what Doug was doing was adding value. He was just identifying like, hey, how could I be the favorite person? I don't know if you ever thought about this, but like the most valuable player to this coach. But that served you so well in life, kind of at every step.
There's a big lesson there, I think, in we have to manage our relationships. And some manage relationships up really well.
Yep.
So this example of a coach, something that's been natural for me. I think I've always done that well of managing those relationships up. But then there's also managing relationships on a peer level.
Yep.
And then managing relationships down of subordinates or coworkers that may report to you or those different things. So you have
I want to stay on this topic because this in a high school, is just as real as it is now.
For sure.
But it's very real now. And I think that all of us have worked with people that they kiss ass and they're really good at like managing up. And then they're a tyrant managing down. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Or it's somebody that, is really good with their peers, but they're just misunderstood by leadership and it caps their progression, or you know what I mean? There's a combo. It's very three-dimensional and it's kind of different skills. So I actually want to hear your opinion on it kind of at 43 years old versus 18 years old.
Totally. Looking back, like it's interesting you've shared some of these things and opened up this chapter. Didn't know we were going here, but I'm excited about it because when I look back, I did that really well. Coach Steve Hansen, look up to him a great deal, but there was like turmoil amongst the team during like summer baseball. I don't remember all of it, but like, was it going to be like kind of the high school team or another team, and who's going to be the coach and who are we going to follow? And I remember kind of making a decision to follow Coach Steve Hansen. He was the high school coach. We do his summer program and really look up to him. But that distanced me from some of the other players on the team who maybe wanted to go a different direction. But I think it's like you have to manage relationships up, but then you can alienate your peers.
Yep.
So how do you not alienate your peers? And I don't think I did that super well at that time.
Yeah.
Where I kind of got sideways with some of the other players and some of my peers because I didn't understand with leadership, you have to lead up, you have to lead your peer group, and you have to be able to lead down and do that effectively. And I think I'm still learning that. I think, naturally up was really easy, but that peer group
so talk
could
to me
be
about
challenging.
What are like the things, because you still do it well. You've got great relationships with lenders. You got great relationships with other CEOs. You got great That's to this day, we wouldn't have done a deal if you weren't able to like navigate very, tricky situations.
Yeah, for sure.
With like, it's an art. It's not a science. It's absolutely an art. So like, what have you learned managing up, if you will? Like, what are those like principles?
Yeah, I think the relationships are, and you've been a mentor to me my whole life. And I'll come full circle here, but Covey was one of your mentors, and you talk often about Covey from the time 20 years ago, even now today, you still do. And, you talk about the principles, but seek first to understand.
Yep.
Right. This is something you've taught. This is something Covey taught, and you talked about it often, and it's like ingrained in me from you.
Yeah.
So I have to thank you, but really understanding who is your customer, right? And who's my customer? It might be a lender, it might be an investor, it might be anything, and going at it might be a coach.
Yep.
Right. But Coach Hansen was a new coach.
Or a mission president.
We can do all of these. And a mission's a great example. Coach Hansen's a great example. Very similar for me in they were both new in leadership roles.
Yep.
Coach Hansen came in when we were, I think you were an 8th grade or a freshman.
Yeah.
He came in, he's a new coach. He was trying to change the culture.
Yep.
So as a player.
And it was different.
It was very different.
Yeah, it was very different than kind of what had been there. It was high school. And then it was summer, and they were 2 different like programs, and
wildly different.
He wanted it to be one program.
Wildly different. Similar scenario. On my mission, I went to Romania. Awesome, most incredible experience ever. Loved my mission, but my first mission president was super laid back. President Jarvis. He was from Hawaii. He'd been a professor out there, like kind of that island feel, like laid back. Jokester, super fun, but like wasn't super strict. And then President Hansen came in about 6 months before the end of my mission, totally different culture, more strict, wear a white shirt, buttoned up, no goofy looking ties, polish your shoes, like just very, sort of strict, wildly different culture. And I was a leader that had to navigate that change. And how do you navigate change with a coaching philosophy, with a mission president, with changing dynamics in business, being able to understand how that's what they're trying to accomplish and trying to help the new leader accomplish what they need, I think is really a key piece of success in life, of being able to not just go with the flow of what it was, but be able to do this sort of change management.
But is it just listening? Is it just listening and then like kind of skating to where the puck's going, like anticipating?
Yeah, who moved my cheese?
Yeah.
Right? This idea, the cheese is moved. Sniff and scurry in the book, who moved my cheese?
That's so hard for people. That's I would say generally that's very, very tough. Like people grasp onto, they get certainty from sameness. I remember there's a Tony Robbins, there's a Tony Robbins quote that it sounds really depressing.
Yeah.
And then you think about it longer and it's actually pretty empowering. He says, everything changes and everything ends. And you're like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. Like everything changes and everything ends. But if you can actually like conceptualize that, like your marriage will change and at some point it will end. Like you're either going to get divorced or you're going to die. But like there is going to be a point where that ends, but it allows you to kind of be more present in the moment. Just saying, it's not going to be this way forever. My kids aren't going to be this young forever. The business isn't going to be this crazy forever. I just got to like soak up the moment. Just say, this is a moment and I'm going to be present. I'm going to like it and I'm going to do my best, knowing that, it's, if I do my best today, it's going to be better tomorrow.
Totally.
But I think, that is kind of the same thing you're talking about. Who moved my cheese? Big functional change, which we'll get into kind of today and the macroeconomic solar environment, but like going back 20 years ago, same thing, big fundamental change. And you were just able to embrace and go. And ultimately, like last 6 months, probably the best 6 months of your mission, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, these leadership lessons, what we learned, I think it's important for us even now. I think it's back then you reflect, but becoming sort of this idea of leadership of, are you consciously competent?
Yeah.
This is something I've heard you talk about and share different levels of leadership, but in some things we're unconsciously competent, where we're good and we don't know why. And
do you think at that time it was just something you were
That's what
gifted
I think.
with? Yeah.
I think I was unconsciously competent at the time. And, at some point you become consciously competent where now you're good and why, and so you can duplicate it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one that I was always naturally good at that sort of came easy to me. And now I think it's more conscious of you truly try to create relationships, manage those relationships, do it well, help them get the desired outcome that they're looking for. And that's served me really well throughout my career.
Yeah. So you go, and again, this was always something I just respected about you so much. But you were all-state baseball, football. You go to Rick's College, and that was a good experience, right?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Like it was the last year of Rick's. So like Rick's, like if people don't understand it, It was one of the best JUCOs in the nation.
Yeah, they competed for a national championship almost
in
every year.
In a lot of sports.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, so it was kind of a sports JUCO. Like that was kind of what it was known for. And the church came out and basically said, we're not doing competitive sports anymore. It's going to be intramurals.
And leading up to it, I actually almost went to Dixie. I was this close. I had a scholarship to play baseball and football there. And it was always my dream if I could be a two-sport athlete.
Yep.
And I was this close to going. And kind of the first time that I would say like divine intervention in my life that I can like really lead back to was like, it was just not the right fit. And I couldn't describe what that was. I didn't recognize it as anything, but it just didn't fit.
Yeah.
Like the puzzle didn't fit for me there. And I ended up calling the coach kind of just before I'd kind of verbally committed to go down to Dixie. It was last minute. I had to make the decision. I called the coach and said, hey, do you have a running back? Like, I'm interested in coming up. And they said, come on up. Job's yours.
At Rick's.
So I ended up pivoting last minute, going up to Rick's. I showed up and there were 18 running backs trying out and they didn't have any idea who I was. So I show up there like, what am I doing? I was roommates with the general Cameron Jensen. I don't know if you know Cam.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we were roommates up there.
And Cam was a legend.
He was a legend.
Cam was a phenomenal.
But both of us were like these rookies, like showing up and like, I don't think at the time he had a starting spot. I didn't either.
That's crazy.
We were just like, we showed up there. And I remember being in this little dorm room of like, what
18,
in the heck
18
am I doing in Idaho in the middle of nowhere?
The craziest part about that is every one of those kids was the best player in their town.
Yeah.
Was the best player, one of the best players in their state. That's the craziest thing with like high school sports going to college. You just figure out like there's a level and all of us like come to the end of our level.
Totally like
sooner than others.
Like when is it we're all hanging up the cleats? But I remember being there and sort of showing up. You'd got to make a name for yourself. You got to earn your scholarship. You're like, there's a lot of the guys had been on missions and were home from missions. They had this life experience far more mature than this kid right out of high school. And like, you're trying to like join in with these peer groups and whatever. And the speed is so much faster at every level of sports. You kind of get that. And I remember just like, what did I do? And it wasn't until the last day of two-a-days, I literally thought it might be the end of my career. And I made one play. It was an out and up. I'm like running after this ball. I make this diving catch. And the coach comes up to me and what's your name? Robinson, start rotating in. And I'd gotten like no reps for 2 weeks. I was about to quit, make one play, and it kind of like turned. And by game 2, I ended up starting the rest of the season.
Wow. And you guys, how did that finish? Didn't you play for a national championship?
We didn't make national championship, but we ended up playing in a bowl game, and we played Snow College in a bowl game and beat them, and it was a ton of fun. But it was like super cool and fun time. But as you mentioned, they did away with the program while I was on my mission. Yeah. And so I came back afterwards and played down at Snow College for a season, and then
played well there too, didn't you?
And I actually just went and played spring ball. Played spring ball at Snow College. Things were going great, and then decided to get married and started to have a family, and just didn't show up.
Yeah,
just didn't ever go back and started my career and started knocking doors, and that's about the time we started to reconnect.
Well, and talk about that first year, because I still remember this story. So didn't you just start just selling on your own?
So Brandon Ripplinger was on my mission. He was my trainer on my mission. So he was just a stud. He was working for this little company called Atlas. I got home. I needed to make money, and I knew it was either lawn care from before I was doing that or construction. Those were like my 2 options, and I thought I could make $10 an hour, like in construction. That was like if I went and did that. That was good
money, yeah.
And I was like, man, $10 an hour, like I'd be loaded, you know, like the perspective. And then he said, hey, you can sell Dish Network and DirecTV door to door. And I'm like, my parents have Dish Network. Like, I could do that. He's like, well, why don't you come do it? And showed up. He gave me a binder. We went out. He kind of taught me what to do. And that was where the career started. But it was just in Logan. It was hometown, going out around the neighborhood. I didn't know it as summer sales. it just happened to be the summer. And I was
and you were out selling.
I was in between semesters, and I was planning on getting married and needed to make money. And so I started knocking doors and just selling. And so there was a summer program that was going, but I didn't know much about it. It was just me and Brandon in Little Logan, Utah selling. And at the end of the summer, everybody was like done selling or whatever they've been out in Des Moines, Iowa or wherever they were. And I just said, why would I not keep selling? Yeah. So I'd go to college at Utah State. And then after class and everything, I'd just go jump in my car, and it was cold in wintertime, but I'd just kind of like park my car and knock a couple doors and sell a couple of accounts. And that's kind of where it all began.
Wow. And so you did that, and then you managed that year, right? They kind of brought you in and said, hey, this is how the summer program works.
Yeah, they kind of described it to me. They said, we want you to be a manager. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they want me to be a leader. They want me to be a manager. What does this mean? And I'm like, who am I going to manage? They're like, well, you need to find people to manage. Yeah. I'm like, well, I got tons of buddies who want to do this. Like, are you kidding me? This is the greatest thing ever. I'm making way more money than
it's so easy to recruit because you'd lived it, you'd experienced it.
Yeah. So I just told like you and others, I just said, hey guys, this is what this is. You can go out and sell. And
so there's an important point was you did it for a summer before you recruited me, because that was actually really important to me coming into it, was your results from that summer. So talk to me about Denver.
Yeah, so we've been out, I'd had success. And again, it was so like not targeted that I was doing this. It just sort of happened, and I made great money. And so it was very authentic. Like, hey, I'm succeeding. You should come do this too. And I call it production-based recruiting, but my recruiting style was like, hey, you should come do this, but to make sure that you want to do this, come out with me.
Yeah.
We'll go knock doors. Like, come after class. Like, we'll just run out for a couple of hours and I'll show you how easy it is. And we go get a sale and show them, hey, I just made $100 or whatever. And that was kind of the recruiting style. And then from there, we ended up, recruiting 50 guys. Some of them went to Denver. Some of them went to other teams throughout the country, and recruited 50 guys to go out that first summer.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. Just legends were a part of this thing. I mean, Nick Hansen, I remember he was still a good buddy to this day, but Nick was in that first team, and just some amazing guys that were part of that squad. But that team, then they wanted to become managers the next year, and it just continued to kind of grow and build.
So I remember you did that summer, and so I get home off my mission, and it's so fun going back and like these parallels, because I don't think you realized how much this actually impacted my career. And this is when we went different routes.
Yeah.
I just heard production-based recruiting, and I was like, that changed my life. Because I did that my first year at Apex. And I started at that company, and I didn't know how to sell alarms. I was managing, didn't have a team, and put together just a simple, I'm going to drive to Arizona. I'm going to bring all the people I recruited. We're going to keep working until everybody gets a sale, and I get 10 sales, and then we'll come home. And that was how I got by those 6 months. But ultimately, we ended up weeding through people that didn't want to go do it. The people that got sales were solid, and it changed my career because everybody was prepared come summertime. But it was production-based recruiting, and I forgot that you taught me that.
And think about where we all learned production-based recruiting. That's not a term that we use for, this industry or whatever, for door-to-door. But you go back to, what is a football captain or a baseball captain? What do? They go out and produce results. They go get in the cage and hit BP.
Yep.
They go get in the weight room. They show up early. They leave late. They go and do the production. And then they inspire and recruit other people, the team, to do that. That's what a good leader should do.
That's probably why it was so natural for you, and I think even natural for me, because that had been our life.
Yeah.
Like, that was my mission.
And the mission was the same way. Like, what did you do if you were a leader on the mission? We do these exchanges where you'd go out with other missionaries and you'd go demonstrate, you'd go teach, or you'd go and knock on doors with them, or you'd go do the activities with them and teach them. It was real time, like focused out there with the people doing it. And so those principles were so natural, because for years we conditioned ourselves, whether we knew it or not,
Yeah.
that was a successful model.
Yeah.
And so when door to door came, I think it was so natural for us and come up with the terms of things. But that's for sure why you, why anybody in this industry that's had success in door to door, it's the same principles.
So we were both at Atlas, worked there, you know, it was a great experience. I think for both of us, it was very like foundational, even looking back, like
completely
the principles, the leadership experiences that we got way too early in our career. Like you were the president of that company. I was a regional at way younger than you probably should have been, but it was so young and it was growing so fast, which is another like lesson of be a part of a great company that's growing, and you a rising tide really does raise all boats. But that thing crashed down as fast as it went up, and it was crazy traumatic. So talk to me about your experience navigating that, both when it was going down and then two, transitioning to Pinnacle, and just kind of like how you were processing.
Yeah.
Because you were in a different role than I was. Like I was in a more junior role.
Still processing. I mean, when you say trauma, like we all have our own trauma moments. This is for sure one of the most pivotal moments probably of my life, like one of them for sure, because it's 2007, 2008. We've built this company. We've recruited hundreds of people. Your credibility's on the line. You've bled this thing, right? Atlas, I mean, you remember recruiting at these universities, creating a name and a brand and hundreds of people following, right? And suddenly the company that you're working for files bankruptcy, and it was physical checks. We'd passed out checks to everybody. If you remember this, big back ends, like pass out these checks at the end of the summer. And I remember phone calls started right after that of like the check bounced. I'm like, what do you mean the checks bounced? So I called the owners like, hey, like, guys, like the checks are bouncing for these reps that just like all my buddies, like they're looking to me as the leader of sales. Like, where's the money? Like, go get the money. And I remember them saying the money's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean the money's gone? Like, you have an investment fund, this capital fund, and you've taken money. Like, go get the money from there. Like, well, you got to get the money. And they're like, no, all the money's gone. And I just remember like just complete chaos after that.
I can't even imagine that conversation. Like, and even like for you now as an owner, can you imagine sending out back-end checks knowing they're going to bounce? Like, how do you even like go through that? Like, that one's one to me that I'm like, that's crazy. You know what I mean? That even happened.
It happened. And so then, you know, from there, the next couple of weeks were chaos. And, you know, it's sort of the part in our journey where like we ended up in different places. You know, we were all together, and then you ended up with Todd and Alex at it.
Because I actually want to talk about this because I've never actually like heard your full side of the story and like how you experienced it. And I'd actually love to.
Yeah. I think as I look back, you know, you paint your own reality, you try to like process things, but it was just chaos looking back. It was complete chaos.
Yeah.
I remember like before your decision was even made, like there were all these people that we were hoping everybody would all stick together. Like that the group would all kind of stick together, all these Atlas people. But even before we had picked where we were going, people were starting to like flee to like different places. And I just remember it being really chaotic. And I remember realizing that sort of I was being painted as the one who didn't have the money at some point during this. Does that make sense? Like I was looked at, I was the leader of sales, but I'm like, I didn't see the books. I never saw the financials, didn't log into the accounts.
You were kind of getting skewed that you didn't pay back ends.
Well, yeah, you're the leader. You're the leader of sales. They would expect that I would know. And it's one of the things I've learned is like, through that experience was like, I was looked at the leader, but when the money didn't come from, I was also painted as the guy who didn't have the money for it. And I think that was really hard for me. I'm like, guys, like I didn't touch the money, you know, this is the victim story of like, it wasn't me, but I think that was really hard to see relationships damaged by that, where it's like, yeah, I know they sent you a check, it didn't cash, but it wasn't my account, it wasn't my company. Yet it happened. And so that was like really a hard time where I saw relationships being destroyed over this, for something that didn't feel like it was my fault.
Yeah, it felt unjust.
It felt unjust. And so I tried to spend a lot of time like cleaning up behind that. No, it wasn't me. I'm the victim here too, like doing some of those things in retrospect. And, how it went was we ended up meeting with multiple companies. There was a group of us that met with, I think, Todd and Alex at one point or with Vivint at one point, then back to Pinnacle, met some of those guys, then back to Vivint. It was kind of this back and forth of deciding where we were going to go. And ultimately, I remember sort of waking up to a phone call of like, we're going to Apex.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to Apex? Like, we're doing this together, right, guys? Like, nope, we're not. Sorry. And I remember sort of this shift where then it was like, okay, I'm team Pinnacle and you're team Apex. And we just kind of had parting ways. And Mendez, I think, was a part of it. And Dave Force was, and Luke Toon and Mark Toon, and sort of like these people we just sort of like shuffle in our own directions. And I think it was hard to see relationships that we became, suddenly you were on the same team. And now all of a sudden it's like Yankees, Red Sox.
It was so painful.
Like I like it's just
to this day, I still remember like it was so intense. It was so intense. Like it's one of the most intense experiences I've ever had in my life. And the whipsaw of emotions. I remember you'd go meet with the Todd and Alex and like, we're going to Apex. And then you'd go meet with the Chris Monday and you're like, no, we're going to Pinnacle. And just getting pulled back and forth. And at the same time, feeling like tremendous pressure from the people that you're working with, and they're going different directions. And I still remember from my end, was so committed to keeping the group together. And like loyalty to me is like a core principle. Like I'm just
totally
loyal person. I've had the same friends that I've had forever. I've been married to the same girl forever. I'm in the same church. Like loyalty is just something. And so this idea that it wasn't going to work out where we could handle that was so hard for me.
So conflicting.
Super conflicting. And I remember mine, it ended up being kind of one of those like spiritual experiences where met with Todd and Alex, still wasn't going to go do it. And then it was just, it's to this day, like one of the experiences where it was obvious that we needed to do it. And there was going to be consequences that I couldn't foresee, but I knew this was the right decision for me and my family. And the aftermath was so tough because I remember it was, super hard with me and you.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
It was hard with Mark Toon, who'd been my best friend growing up. And even like now you're competing over the same people. And it was just, it's this tiny microcosm of business.
If you haven't experienced it, it's like probably tough to understand what we're even talking about, but it was intense.
The world was ending too financially.
Yeah, totally.
Like companies were imploding and there were a lot of people losing their jobs, losing their houses. It was like a really dark, it wasn't just this. It was like, I remember I owned multiple homes.
Yeah.
That these homes are all of a sudden underwater.
Substantially, yes.
I remember I had an investment with Wade, and that investment's gone.
We owned a gym together.
So this is actually like we owned this is actually like, this is a highlight for me, and this is just the biggest compliment I could give to you. We went separate ways. It wasn't fun. We're both signed on this gym. And we had 3 other partners on that gym that just stopped paying.
Mm-hmm.
So we owned a tiny piece, but we're responsible for it. And somehow we were able to like pay the bills.
We showed up. We figured it out. We wound it
together
down.
and wound it down. And that was always something that like I really admired about you was you didn't leave me hanging.
Same.
Yeah.
But like both ways, even though we were competing at that point to go wind it down, and it wasn't fun. It's paying bills for a business that's
money that you don't have,
that you don't have, and figure it out, and payment plans and all of those things. But it's really funny to look back and to look at it, because there were some feelings that I had and harbored some feelings towards you of like this middle of the night experience that you had, spiritual moment. And I've even listened to podcasts where you talk about it of like, you had this experience and you need to go this direction. But I felt like, man, like, what the heck? Like he bailed on me, like, you know, so for like, I felt that. And it's interesting now in retrospect with like more experience in life, and obviously we've reconciled that and been through that. But isn't it cool that like I was sideways with Todd, Alex, I was sideways with you for a time period. You were sideways with like Chris Monday and Steve Zollman and these guys. But like now I look at it and I now have really good relationships with all of those people.
Time is really interesting and experience is really interesting. And you get to the other side of you just have some experiences. I remember being on, I remember selling in an organization and always feeling like the person on top of me wasn't doing anything, wasn't creating any value for me. And I was the one that was creating all the value and felt it was really unjust.
Yeah.
And then I became the senior guy. And then I had guys that were working for me that felt like I wasn't doing anything. And I was so like offended. I was like, what are you talking about? I recruited you. I trained you. And then I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I felt that way about Bo. And now this guy feels this way about me. Maybe this is a systemic problem. This isn't
right.
But in the moment, you're like completely,
and you're justified and you're the victim and
pissed. Yeah. And I still remember, you know, for me, a reconciliation moment, and there's more of these because this cycle actually, you went and ran Pinnacle. We went and ran Apex. Mm-hmm. Pinnacle, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Like both similar business models. One of them didn't work and Apex has worked great.
Yeah. I remember like the business was kind of going in different direction. Pinnacle was, and I remember calling, I actually called Todd first. And I said, Todd, like, this isn't going well. We ought to do something. Like, and he was in the middle of the Blackstone deal. Like it wasn't closed yet, but they were like, it was like happening. Like they were on flights back and forth and like in the middle of the grind. I remember him and Alex just grinding, you know, and you know, they ended up closing that. And I remember just being like, all right, it's time, like this business kind of go in this direction. It's time to join back up and kind of put on the same jersey again.
Yeah.
You know, which was really exciting and was like really looking forward to that chapter and being a part of it.
Yeah. In hindsight, that was never going to work. And it's so obvious now.
Right.
But that was one that I got offended. Like when you left, because you were there for about a year and then you were gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I like put my reputation on the line, my name on the line. And as time's gone on, I look back and say, Doug is like a pure entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like has been since he was 12 years old. And to go work in an org under somebody else was just never going to work.
And you know, it's interesting. I think there's a play where it could have worked. And I think it could have worked if it was you and me, because it was, but there were more people a part of it. Yeah. And it's not that the people were wrong, but you had other partners.
Had other partners that, you know,
and I hadn't gone through and I hadn't gone through the process with them to connect with them, to make sure it was a good fit and all of those things.
Yep.
And I never did. Like even after the deal was done, sort of they stepped into it, and I never I always relied on the conversations you and I had in that connection, but I never was able to connect to them with them. That was like a mistake looking back on my side, to just create that alignment and build that trust with those guys that sort of we never did. And, but I think you're right. Like, I didn't know it at the time, but I wanted and needed to be an entrepreneur. And it kind of forced us down this path where I ended up starting Legacy. I don't know, almost 2 years after being there and starting Legacy. And, it's so funny how you go back to Atlas. Could we have all stayed together? The reality is your journey was right for you and my journey was right for me. And that's okay.
And we would have never been the people that we are today without it.
That's it. Of like, you have this full circle moment where you're like, it was right for you. My path was right for me, even though they were in different paths. It's not always the same path for everybody. And I think that's something.
I go to this again. Tony Robbins is my guy. Like just from language that captures, what I've experienced in life. But he has this theme about life is happening for you and not to you.
Exactly.
And if you can truly adopt that philosophy, it's tough. It's hard.
It's very hard.
Because you have to trust. You have to trust when the cards don't fall in your favor, when a lender goes bankrupt, that life is happening for you, or when your friend goes a different route, that life is happening for you, or there's a physical, a health issue. But what I found is like, it's true. Like when you look 100%. At the man you are today, and I would take myself, I couldn't have got here with any other journey. Like I had to walk the path that was my path. And the other thing that he talks about that's really interesting is with trust. And he said, you can trust somebody that's aligned with you. And that was always something that was like I couldn't put together because for me, like,
totally
trust is like I trust you. We played football. We
all the
played
things.
Sports. You've got character. You've got competency. I've always known that you're super capable. Second, I've always known that you're a good person. The times where it got sideways was alignment.
100%.
Yep. And alignment's really tough. Like, and that's one that I've learned with having multiple partners. And if you're misaligned, it's not going to work out well. You know what I mean? Because you end up just decisions that you're making have conflicting outcomes. And so that's another like lesson that it's hard medicine.
Yeah. And sometimes on the front end, having difficult conversations to make sure that the alignment's correct.
Is there. It's so important.
Instead of, sometimes we don't want to have conflict because we don't want to be confrontational, but to make sure that the alignment and the expectation set, I think, is a fundamental thing that often we miss.
Yeah.
And something that I've learned.
So you go do Legacy. Talk to me about that journey. Because that business is 10 years old now, 12 years old.
Yeah. Almost, 11 years old.
Talk to me about like, what are you the most proud of? Couple that with what's the hardest thing you've ever experienced?
Surviving. That's what I'm most proud of, is surviving. Any entrepreneur that survives a startup business and makes it through, they have something to like cheer about, because most don't make it.
Yeah.
Like legit, most businesses, I don't know the statistics, maybe you have some, but how many startups fail?
What I've heard is 9 out of 10 in the first 5 years and 9 out of 10 of those in the next 5 years. So if you really like break it down, it's 1 to 2%.
So you look at that like surviving. And when I say surviving, like there are so many times I can look back now and be like, we were dead in the water.
Yeah.
So many times. For starters, like when the company started, we faced a lawsuit. Like we were being sued. I remember
Vivint lawsuit.
Vivint Solar and Blackstone versus Doug Robinson.
Wow.
Here you go. And how are you going to fight this? Like, I have some home equity, like, and I'm going to go up against that. So like, it was my whole life, my whole world. I'll never forget, I'd wanted to do solar. I'd wanted to be in the solar business. There's this weird thing with Blackstone where I couldn't be in the solar business. There was kind of this iron curtain that they'd placed, and a lot of the people I'd worked with had been in the solar business.
Yeah,
Greg Butterfield and others. I wanted to go join that, but wasn't allowed to. So he said, "Hey, let's go do solar. I'll go look elsewhere." Ended up looking at Sunrun, and we ended up starting this business, Legacy, to be a sales arm for Sunrun.
Yep,
and it was awesome. But you start a company, you meet with Sunrun, downtown San Francisco and say, hey, I can build a national scale sales force for you. And I tell Lynn and Ed, the founders of Sunrun, this, I can build a national scale sales force for you. And they're like, you have a company? I'm like, well, like, no, I can do this. Like, I've done it in satellites and alarms. And they're like, what are you, who are you? You have a company? Yeah. I'm like, no, I don't have a company. Like, you have like a building? No, but like, me and Luke, we can do it. I promise you we can do this.
Wow.
And they were like, we're in this board overlooking, like, you know, it's like downtown San Francisco, 24th floor, overlooking the bay in this conference room. And they're like, why should we trust that you can do this? You don't have a company. I'm like, we incorporated yesterday. Like we have a company. And they're like, okay, you have a shell company. You have no employees and you can build a sales force nationally to sell solar for our company. Yes, we can. And I remember them looking at me like I was crazy. Yeah. And they said, why should we trust that you can do it? And I said, why should I trust that you can install them when we do it? Was my response. Yeah. And Lynn, to this day, she's one of my mentors and really look up to her. But she like later, she said, you know, just the confidence that you had. There was something about the confidence that swagger. You could do it, of just like confidence. It's like, you know, a story for guys on the doors. Like you just learn on the doors to just have this confidence.
That truly is like that thing. That confidence isn't artificial. Like it's coming from a place of certainty. Like I've about been killed a lot of times and no one can kill me. Like I'll keep fighting and
no matter what,
I will persist until I succeed.
Yeah.
And that's what she's feeling. Isn't like a, hey, I can do this hoping. It's, I have certainty that I can do this. And when I think about like the things that give me the most confidence in myself, like I go to sleep at night every night knowing my family's always going to be taken care of. Like I can create out of thin air.
Yep, 100%.
And it's from 2 decades of doing it, you know. But those early years, you're not as, you got to earn it. Like that swagger in that moment is earned.
Totally.
But it's fun to hear those stories.
Yeah,
because,
it is fun. You know, and I think
even for those guys, they didn't know what they were doing, and they were like a way different company back then.
No, they just knew that Vivint Solar existed. They came out of nowhere and blew up through door to door, but they had no idea what door to door was or how to do it. And so, man, the first 5 years were really fun. We became, you know, one of the largest, I think the largest solar sales company in America. 2014 to 2019 just blew up. The business was rocking. We had an exclusive arrangement with them, exclusive partnership, and man, it was fun. We were selling, but we were selling for pennies. The market's completely shifted, but like we weren't making money. I mean, we were surviving and growing, but like
no margins.
Founders, like there was no margins.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of a wave that hadn't crested yet, but we could see it, but we just kept grinding. We ended up kind of going through all the lawsuit stuff that took 5 years and $1 million bucks.
Ended up winning the lawsuit, right?
Yeah, it ended up, we got summary judgment awarded to us and, you know, kind of went in our favor and we ended up settling it and it all ended well. But was
that validating?
Oh yeah.
Like
that at that time, it fueled us because it was sort of like a David and Goliath, Vivint Solar, Blackstone versus Doug Robinson, and like feeling validated and feeling vindicated when you got that ruling from the judge of like, I wanted to see everybody and nobody cared. Yeah. Right. You realize afterwards, like nobody
Isn't that
really
the craziest lesson?
Oh, totally.
That what is the most important thing in the world to you? No one cares.
Yeah.
Like I think that's out of anything, you know, that I've learned over my career is that you really shouldn't take yourself too seriously at any moment in time because people aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves and their own life and their own family and their own
100%.
It's fascinating.
And we'll get so wrapped up in things that actually don't matter. And you know, it's like kind of leading into like spiritual side of my life, but it's like forgiveness.
It becomes a canker or like a sore.
We hold on to stuff for so long. I mean, I held on to stuff, you and me, we've held on to stuff for a long time between, you know, whether it was this lawsuit stuff, like holding on to stuff versus like just pick up the phone and resolve it.
I think the reconciliation for me and you came earlier for me than it did for you. And I think it was because I'd gone through an experience. Like I transitioned from Vivint.
Yeah.
And that was another traumatic experience. Like I think about these different times of trauma in my career. And I think trauma is a good thing. I think trauma is like a sign to grow, like
for sure.
People
uncomfortable.
People talk about trauma as like, oh, that was a bad thing. I'm like, the trauma in my life has created me.
It's
like,
refined you.
Super grateful for
strengthened you.
But it's not easy. And then I remember we had just taken like 400 people to South Africa. All of our leaders, gearing up for a big year, did a big charity trip. I still remember doing this big cheer on the top of this hotel in South Africa. So fun, such good energy. Took our kids out there and get a call when I get back. Actually got a call from Mendez, and Mendez like, hey, I think our time at Vivint's done. I'm like, give me the deets. What's it look like? He said, I talked to Todd and, I think it's time for us to transition. And so I called Todd, and Todd's like, we're going to go make changes to the business and you're going to hate everything that we do. Like we're going public. We're going to consolidate all the divisions back under one. Todd Santiago, we're going to bring him back as the chief revenue officer. And, we had bumped heads with Todd Santiago over the years.
Sure.
And so it really was kind of like,
but your identity at this point,
the tree had outgrown,
yeah.
But my whole identity was Vivint.
That's what I was going to say. Like this change is like tearing apart your identity and who you were and your reputation and your brand. And
well, of course, and so I remember saying, okay, Todd, what are you thinking? And so we go sit down, and he literally said, him and Alex, they're like, what if we just paid you for 5 years not to be here? And I'm like, let's do it. And so these guys gave us the most generous off-ramp. To this day, I look back and I'm like, if I could think, that's one of the things that I'm the most grateful for, that I was able to not have to go compete against my friends. I'd seen it happen so many times.
Yeah.
It's so painful every time. There's like no way to do it in a way that's not painful. And somehow I was able to ride off into the sunset and keep those relationships.
And good for them to have the foresight and the ability to be able to structure it that way.
Honestly, I consider that as one of like God's grace, because they truly are, like, both those guys are two of my greatest mentors.
Yeah.
But I didn't have other skills. I'd spent my whole life in this thing. And if I wasn't at Vivint, I was going to be across the street and I would have got sued by Blackstone or whatever. Like, there's just, we've seen it so many times now that's what happens. Like, and you've been on both ends of it. Yeah. And it's just my least favorite part of the business. Like, it's so hard. And so that transition happened, and like literally in 3 days, it went from South Africa getting geared up to go give it another 5 years to I'm unemployed, except I've got really good income. But I can't do the job that I've done. And
really interesting.
And it was hard for me. Like it was hard for my phone to stop ringing. It was your identity's so wrapped up in it. But through that process, it was about a year, and then COVID hit, which was another like really surreal experience, really similar to like 2007, where the world's kind of imploding. Like, and I remember kind of going through this process of reconciliation, and I didn't realize how many people that I had hard feelings towards, and I had some quiet. And so I actually had some time. And over that time, it was just realizing like, hey, I need to reach out to, there was something with this relationship that the circumstance dictated a lot of these situations, that this person's been a person who's special to me at times in my life. And I remember I was up in Logan. Dave Force had me come and speak to his guys. And it was this really unique. I was driving, south side of the valley.
I remember this, yeah.
And I called you up, and I don't think we talked in 5 years.
The phone rings. It's like, Casey Bob is calling me. Like, all right, I'm going to answer, but I wait a couple rings, staring at this, like my mind racing of like, what's this going to be? And I remember it.
I still remember. I just said, hey, Doug, like driving through Cache Valley, I'm remembering a lot of good times that we had, and we've had good times and bad times, but I just want to tell you, like, thanks for being a good friend over the years, and sorry for any, pain that I've caused, and also like that I'm cheering for you. And I was fully there.
Yeah.
And I don't think you were. I
No.
think
No.
when I called, I could feel kind of this like, oh, what does he want? What's the angle? But that was kind of the start. You know what I mean?
And I wanted to be there. I wanted it to be genuine and all those things. And I was in a place at the time where I was in the middle of like litigation stuff. I just fought 5 years against Vivint Solar. In discovery, I read every text message and email that anybody had said about me. By the way, that's not recommended for anybody's like health.
Yeah.
Because things can be taken out of context. You don't know. But it's like there's so much, and it was my life.
Yeah.
Versus I think for Vivint or for you, it was like standard course of business is going on. But for me, it was like, no, I'm funding this thing. I was like in it, and, so as I reflected on that, I don't think I was in a place at that time. I wish I would have been.
Yeah.
It took me longer. And I think that's a lesson to me is like, get over your stuff sooner. Like we hold on to stuff for so long. And I've literally thought about this. Like, why, when you reached out, why didn't I just take it as authentic and just be done with it and move on? But maybe I had to have a villain in my story. Yeah. So I was the hero and you were the villain. And somehow in my mind, I'd created this, but you were the villain for a while in my story. And now you're the hero though. Okay. So,
but it wasn't, what was interesting is it wasn't that way for me. Like you weren't the villain in my story. When you transitioned out, we didn't cross paths too much. Solar's enough different than Vivint,
right?
That we really didn't have too many friction points. And for me, I had enough villains in my own story. Like Vivint was just a like, when I look back about like Vivint, and to this day, like I respect all those guys. Anybody who can make it in that industry, you're a resilient sucker, because it is a knife fight.
It is.
And I had enough villains in my story, and you weren't front and center. You know what I mean? Like it. And so it was interesting where, like that was kind of the start. And then 3 or 4 years later, we end up actually like reconciling, coming together. There was a second one that was interesting to me. We had an interaction up at Victory Ranch.
It was divine.
That was really neat, because Cam Brown had always been good buddies with Cam Brown.
Mm-hmm. I still think he set this up.
Mark Toon. But I saw you guys up there, and the same thing, just short connection.
Mm-hmm.
But it was when Crew had just finished. He just finished high school and had like balled out and was going to college. And it was just checking in on Crew and just seeing how he was. And
how's it going? Yeah.
It was super brief. Yeah.
It was interesting, very brief. But as we drove, I can still picture where we were. As we drove away, Cam leans over and he's like, how was that? Like, 'cause he knew that I had some feelings. And he said, how was that? And I remember saying to him, it was great. I'm over it. I literally remember like, that was a great interaction. Like, I'm over it. I need to let it go. And that was like the start for me of like, that was when I was like, I got to let this go. Like, Casey's out golfing. I don't want to feel these feelings that I had felt. And it was that moment I leaned over and I'm like, you set this up, Cam. Like, you set up this golf for Casey to be there and have this interaction. He's like, I swear I didn't. But no, really, really grateful. And I think, the journey of like life lessons is like, life is short, man. Why did it take me a decade, 10 years of harboring these feelings that like were only hurting me?
Yeah.
It was only.
You wonder if it could be any other way, though.
Yeah.
Like, I think about this, you can always do better, but the only way to learn is to learn. And I even think like your like ecclesiastical role now is like a bishop. It's got to change you. Like it has to change the way that you see the world, I would assume. Like,
I think leadership changes you, right? Like, ecclesiastical or not, sometimes when you're asked to be in a leadership role, you think differently. It changes you. And separate the spiritual side from it for a minute, but just leadership in general does that, on my mission, being asked to be a leader, or a few missionaries, or being asked to be a team captain. Are you a little bit more prompt? Are you a little bit more focused? Or do you know what I mean? Does it elevate your level? And I think the same thing in an ecclesiastical role is like, it's caused me to look inward and say, okay, do I need to level up in this certain area of my life? And super grateful for that.
Talk to me about your business in solar 2023, 2024, 2025, and kind of what you experienced. When I asked you that question earlier about like, what are you the most proud of? And you say surviving.
Oh yeah.
Like,
for sure.
Talk to me about what you experienced as the CEO building this business.
Yeah, 10 years. I mean, 10 years, if I were to draw a graph, it would look maybe like a lot of businesses, maybe a lot different, but series of peaks and valleys, right? I train on this. I talk about this. Like, we have peaks and valleys, and there's market cycles, and you see the ups and downs. And, in our personal lives, we have those. In our spirituality, we have those. In all areas, we have these peaks and valleys. I call it like the stock market of our lives. Like, we're going through in our marriages, these ups and downs. And business has been no different. When you look at the residential solar industry, boom and bust cycles, we've seen it. And this last sort of 18 months, you've had lenders where you go out and you do everything you're supposed to do. You sell the job, you install the job, you buy the equipment, you install the solar panels, you go and complete the project, and then you go to get paid. And it's like, oh yeah, we can't pay you. We're going bankrupt. And like, when you have, I don't know, the total $15 million or something owed to you, and all of a sudden you're like, that's uncollectible and you're not going to get that, but you've paid for all the equipment. You've got sales commissions you've got to pay. You've got labor that you've got to pay, and you don't have the revenue side to offset that. Wildly difficult. And that's just one thing that's sort of come of like, what do you do when that happens?
Yeah.
What do you do
when that happens?
You get scrappy. You're like, okay, I'm down. How do I shuffle? How do I pivot? How do I make things work? Who can I call? How do I go bridge this? How do I like get through this? You know, what banks, how do you go do it? And you start making phone calls.
I was with someone that we both know at a wedding, Steven Anderson's wedding. And they were asking about legacy and like how we got involved with legacy. And I was telling that story of just Doug reached out. And it was like, for me, it was a spiritual thing. Like, I've had like these different experiences in my life. And it was one where you reached out and I was like, yeah, I want to see if I can help. But his feedback on you, and I would take this as the like most sincere compliment from maybe somebody that's not your biggest champion, is Doug is the most scrappy individual and he always figures it out. And I was like, I need to communicate that with Doug, because that's like a really kind compliment for probably somebody who's a competitor and maybe is like sitting on the sidelines hoping that somebody doesn't figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's just, you've survived.
Yeah.
You figured out how to survive.
So we go through that, I call Casey and say, Casey, we need a bridge. We've got to bridge some of this. We didn't get paid. What can we do? Sort of brings us together. And you're immediately like, yes, like How do we do this? Like what does this need to look like? And with humility and with a lot of love and compassion. And we start to talk, and you go through that process, and then the industry gets hit with the big beautiful bill and political change, and all these things start to sort of happen with a lot of uncertainty. And it's been a trying time for the solar industry. When you look out there, there's probably 9 out of 10 solar companies are out of business, have failed. And, what I'm most excited about is through all of that, we have a really big presence with amazing salespeople, great fulfillment capabilities, and now pivoting our business from just solar only to home services, adding roofing and HVAC, and going through this process of expanding the reach to provide, customers awesome experiences combined with, taking care of salespeople and customers and just doing it the right way and building a brand. Like, super fun. Love what I do every day, love showing up and love battling. And even in the midst of hard stuff, it's like we go back to the trauma. What did we do in 2008? What did you do? Paychecks weren't paid.
So I've taught up at BYU. This was one of like the gifts in my life, right? Where I finished up at Vivint. I had one of my neighbors, good buddy, that taught up at BYU. And he's like, hey, just come teach with me. I felt super insecure. I'm like, I didn't graduate from college. He's like, I didn't either. And I'm like, oh, cool. Let's do it. And so it's been fun. But one of the lessons that I teach every year is on failure. And there's these core failures, Atlas and, these different points that shape you forever. Like, that is the refiner's fire, where you figure out what you're made of, and you can roll over and die, or you can, rise up and have that be your greatest moment. And I think that's the hero's journey. I think that's why we love good movies. I think,
for sure, 100%.
But being in the arena, it's like, I try to remind myself, when there's fear that creeps in, or anxiety or doubt or whatever, it's like, hey, just breathe and be grateful that you get to be in the arena. Like, this is crazy.
That's it.
You're living right now. This is peak life.
And it's so interesting because, this journey of peaks and valleys, and we all go through it. It's so interesting because it's like the failures of the past have created the resiliency for us to be able to do the things that we need to for today. And the challenges that we're going through today are going to help us for the obstacles of tomorrow to be able to get through them. It's like, would I be able to handle the pressure of what we've dealt with the last 18 months now had I not been through all these things we've talked about? Probably not.
But if you've talked to anybody about my investment thesis in Legacy, it has nothing to do with solar, has nothing to do with anything other than I think Doug will figure it out. And it's not because it's like, I just have seen you figure it out over some really gnarly stuff.
Yeah.
And right now you're selling solar. And I actually think solar, like, I have a bull case on solar that I think is contrarian right now. Like, I've thought about this a lot, even over the last 2 or 3 months, with AI and with power consumption and how much it's going to strain everyday consumers, because there's just more consumption than power available.
It's a supply and demand. It's a basic supply and demand.
Specifically around consumers. Mm-hmm. If they don't have a fixed escalator, they're going to get smoked. Like, I think OpenAI yesterday announced $1 trillion plan in data centers and computing. And all of that just takes a almost unfathomable amount of energy. We don't have the capacity. And so there is even a bull case on a resurgence of solar. But I think our conversation is saying, how do you go reposition the business that you're never dependent on any product? That you optimize different market cycles and different business segments.
That's right.
But you're never dependent. And that's hard because there's kind of two competing things. You have to run the business that you have today and optimize, while also creating the business that you're going to be tomorrow and the next year. And I think those are the leadership challenges that for me, when I've made money, it's when I bet on a Todd Peterson or bet on a Weston Lunsford or bet on a Vess Pearson, that these guys had hard challenges that would sink, or bet on a David Neilman. Yeah. That most people would have gone bankrupt. Bet on a Bart Longson with ClickLease. Like, I could go through every one of those businesses and have inflection points where they should have gone bankrupt and their competitors went bankrupt. And somehow they got resourceful and they got gritty and they got scrappy and they figured out how to reposition. And then all of a sudden when the wind gets at your back, you don't have many competitors. That's, you know, right, what I mean? And if you can come out of it, there's actually like the best companies that have ever been created have been created in the downturns.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's interesting. Hayes Bernard is one of my mentors and just love him. He's the founder of Good Leap. Formerly was the chief revenue officer at Solar City as they were acquired by Tesla, but incredible human being. Just love Hayes to death. But he shares a story about his downturn where he was in the mortgage business in 2008, just had to survive 2008, survived it, ended up, building Paramount Solar, this little solar company. They grew, they were acquired by Solar City that later was acquired by Tesla and like this journey for him. But he shares a story about how value is built in the valley of like the value was him surviving 2008. He never would have had what he has today and built what he'd become without this challenge. Yeah. And in a similar fashion, like I look at what we've been able to do of, $370 million in revenue last year, like growing this company, bootstrapping it, getting there, being hit hard by market conditions and sort of getting through and getting scrappy with it. But values built in the valley. And that's the dust is settling and now coming out of it, we're starting to install our first roofs and our first HVAC and starting to like expand to become a true home services company. And it's fun to be able to lean on guys like you and Alex and others and say, how did you do Vivint? What was that experience like? Or listening to other entrepreneurs that have been successful. And oftentimes it's pivots in the right moments. How many businesses have been on case studies that have talked about pivots at key moments?
That to me has been the biggest lesson of case studies.
The pivots.
Everybody sees success as this linear line.
It's just
and
not.
It actually like is easier for us to conceptualize it like that. And when you really get into the story, it's a very ugly, messy journey.
That's right.
Of just staying with it and getting gritty and getting a little bit better and improving. And then all of a sudden you get some luck, but luck happens when you're in the game. Like, sometimes the cards just fall in your favor, but you got to stay in the game, and that, like, it sounds so simplistic. There's a Harvard business quote or like an acronym. It's called DROME. And it's don't run out of money. And it's like, well, that's a, super, and it's like, well, yeah, if you don't run out of money, you get to stay in the game. You got to play another month, another 6 months, another year. And if you are making those pivots, eventually you go find that sweet spot where you have the product that the market needs and, product market fit. It's so hard to find, but when you find it, you can build a great business around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm really bullish on it. You talk about the AI and the consumption of electricity, changing the way the world produces and consumes power. Yeah. It's everyday life for all of us. And if those costs skyrocket for people, it's going to be a problem. And being at the forefront of being able to create a solution feels really good. And we're super bullish on that and just taking care of homeowners. So
the other one that, gives me a ton of confidence. If you can create revenue, you can survive. The revenue cures a multitude of sins.
Completely.
And that's kind of always something you've been so good at is attracting really incredible people. That can drive revenue. And assuming that you've got the right unit economics and you've got the right, pricing and structure in place, that you can shoot your way out of the saloon. You know what I mean? Like you can get out of it if you can actually go create revenue.
Yeah.
And that's always something you've been great at.
Yeah, we're bullish.
But before we finish up, the couple more questions. You've been married 22 years?
Yep. You got it.
How do you stay married? Like, talk to me about that. This was a theme for me and Brian. We're on our 20th anniversary. And I would say my relationship with Chelsea is better than it's ever been. I love her more than I've ever loved her. But we work hard at it. Talk to me about your marriage and like how you stay married, and what are like the operating principles for you and Krista?
I have to give Krista a lot of credit on it. Honestly, like she, growing up for her was a little traumatic, went through a divorce. It was kind of a messy divorce and parents separated and everything. But one of the things, so she was my first kiss at 14 years old. We dated through high school, went to mission, went to college, went their separate ways, and then sort of came back together. And we'd both grown into the people to love each other.
Yeah.
The 14-year-old kind of high school love was very different than later on, and very different from today. But her commitment, because of her sort of experiences growing up, her commitment to marriage.
Yeah.
Was something that fundamentally I would say I was committed to as well, and that she was. And so it's sort of like when we made the commitment, we're all in no matter what comes.
Yeah.
And I think that's like really, really important because it's sort of the resiliency of an entrepreneur. In marriage, you have to be resilient because there will be times when I'm not the best version of me.
Yeah.
There will be times when she's not the best version of her. There will be times of patience and long suffering and love and forgiveness and all these principles that need to be a part of it for marriage to survive. But I think a big part of it is like looking at it and saying, no, I'm going to be committed to you. Through the ups, through the downs, no matter what comes, I'm going to be all in there. And I think that's been probably the thing that's helped the most. Now, there are certainly situations for someone when they are like that and it doesn't work out for them.
Yeah.
And I want to be respectful of those situations. There's abuse and there's so many different things that can happen. But for those considering marriage or those like working on it, like being committed and being all in and stay through it, because just like we talked about the peaks and the valleys, like you might be in a valley.
How do you work through it? Like for you guys, what's your process of working through it?
Communicating and learning to communicate. And, sometimes.
Because it's hard. Like when you're in a funk, like for me and Chelsea, that's where we struggle. And it's always pride. Mostly on my side. But she'll get prideful. You know what I mean? I'll have done something that offends her. And she doesn't want to like not be mad. You know what I mean? Like,
well, the internal conflict that I've talked to Krista a lot about this. She's like, I want to be a supportive wife. I don't want to be a nagging wife, but there's something bugging me and something that I got to get off my chest. And so like sometimes she'll be mad. And I know that she's mad, but she's not communicated. But somehow I just know that something's up. And you can choose, to ignore it or to try to find a way to talk about it. And figuring out how your partner communicates and how they need to communicate and how they need to feel safe. I love the book Crucial Conversations. Joseph Grenny is a mentor of mine. Like, absolutely love and revere him, and super grateful for him. But the book Crucial Conversations is so powerful, and I think can help relationships a ton too. Of how do you have a crucial conversation? And culturally, where we're at here in Utah, I think many people are passive aggressive.
Yeah,
and it's really hard to communicate about sensitive topics, whatever that might be. And learning to have those conversations, creating a safe environment. He walks through how to do that. And I think there's tools in there that are super helpful.
That's cool. Talk to me about your faith and how that's played in, from the get-go. And then also we talked about like, it's interesting talking about your journey.
Mm-hmm.
There's been some hard times.
Yeah.
Some dark days.
Yeah.
I think from the outside, people would look at you and say, Doug's always, pretty happy, pretty optimistic, it always kind of works out for Doug, or it has.
Yeah.
But like when you really like unpack it, there's been tremendous trial. Like how does faith factor in all of it?
Yeah.
As a dad, as a professional, as a husband, even just, your personal relationship.
Yeah. I think, faith is such an interesting concept for everybody in their own way and how they define it and what faith means to them. And is God a part of your faith, or is God not a part of your faith? I would say for me, when I hear the word faith, I think of God. I think of like a commitment to God. I think of a foundation. And I would say my whole life, I've always known that God exists. That's never been a challenge for me. Does God exist? And do I have faith in a higher power, a higher being that's way bigger than me? That's never been a challenge for me. But in terms of like actually developing this idea of faith and really believing in that higher power, and or believing in faith in marriage, or faith in a market, or faith in my ability to provide, or all of those things, I think it goes through cycles of these ups and downs. And I would say recently my sort of faith has just been stretched of like, what do I believe? How do I believe it? What does that look like? And what are the core foundational pieces for me? And I break it down this way. I break it down into, we've got to love, we've got to forgive, we don't need to judge others, and we need to serve others. Like when you make your faith like that foundational and just make it simple, I find, simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. Like that simple, those simple truths that we learn, like that's the foundation of what I try to make the foundation of everything. And it can apply to business. Do I love my employees? Do I love my salespeople? Do I love the installers who get in the roofs in 120? Do I forgive them when they make mistakes? Can we forgive? Can we do those things? Do I not judge them and try to seek to understand their perspectives? How can I serve them and add value to them? Like it applies in business. It applies in our congregations, it applies in our families. Like inside of the home unit and the family unit, like, do I love them? Do I forgive them? How oftentimes, like, talk about families, and so oftentimes we're slowest to forgive our own families. We somehow siblings or spouses or kids,
we're harder on them.
We're harder on them sometimes. And I'm like, I think like this idea of just love and forgive and don't judge and serve, like it just unifies so many people. And so that's really been, say, the last couple of years, a focus for me of simplifying how I think about God and faith and what is it, and bring it back to these fundamental couple of things. And if it doesn't fit inside of that, to me, it's like culture. And I put it in this bucket of, this is culture over here. But if it ties to this is my faith box.
This concept of business being a spiritual game, like based on your definition, that just makes complete sense. You know what I mean? If it's the same principles in your business, in your family, with your congregation, then it's all the same. It's just people. It's people and forgiving them.
Yes, and coming back to these principles, and there's so many different things that can be polarizing. Whether it's political things, or whether it's any of these things. Our world can be so polarizing, right? But it's like, how many people would agree with, we need to love, forgive, not judge, and serve one another? Like it doesn't matter. It's like it just unifies so many people, and I don't know. I find that's very unifying. And I find when you can unify around something, whether that's a congregation, a work environment, anything, that's where you start to build good culture. That's where you start to build trust. That's where you start to get the flywheel going. That's what people want to be around when it feels inclusive to them.
Yep. I love it. Last question. If you were to go back and talk to 21-year-old Doug, knowing what you know now, like what advice would you give yourself? Like if you could literally go back and have that conversation.
It's a really good question. I think probably two things. One, I would say you're enough. like, you're enough. I think those are such powerful words to anybody. And I think for all of us, we're so hard on ourselves. We think we don't measure up. We think we're, this or that, but we're enough. And I think like at the foundation of what you're enough means to all of us, to myself, to my younger self, you're enough is like, you are a son or a daughter of God who loves you. Like, there is so much power in that there's a creator and we are enough because we are his children.
You think at that age, there was like some imposter syndrome or there's like some insecurities that just, you're saying you don't need to have those. Trust, trust. Is that kind of the message or?
Yeah, it's not about how much money you make. It's not about what career you choose. It's not about any of those things. It's you're enough just the way you are. And you can succeed no matter what you choose, no matter what life path you take, no matter what direction you go, you're enough. And have that faith and have that belief and have that confidence and push forward. And I just think our world needs to hear that. I think that people need to hear that. I think I needed to hear that at 20 years old. You're enough. Don't make it about a measuring, did you sell more than this person or did they sell more than you? Were you the top this? Don't make it about the accolades. Just be a good person and do your best every single day. And don't manage the outcomes. Right. We often try to manage the outcomes. Just go give it your all.
Trust it.
And just trust the process.
What's number 2? You said a couple of things.
Yeah. So that's number 1. Number 2 for me, as I look back, if I were to give advice to my 21-year-old self would probably be to forgive sooner. We've kind of talked about that, like forgive people. Seek their perspective rather than your own. Don't get stubborn. Don't get prideful. Put that aside and seek to understand where they're coming from. Just forgive.
Yeah. I have heard this, and again, it's counterintuitive, but it talks about like having lower expectations of people. And that's like, you think like, hey, I got to have really high expectations, but like by lowering the expectations a little bit, you kind of allow people a little more grace where You're not holding them to like this standard of perfection that all of us are going to fall short of. And then
but if you say it differently, it's like, hey, Casey, I'm just going to lower my expectations of you.
Yeah.
It can almost come across as offensive.
Well, and I think, I think it's got to be an internal thing of just saying like, I'm going to hold myself to really high standards.
Yeah.
But I'm going to hold other people to really low standards, and not like low standards in a negative way. Just, it's not going to take that much for me to be happy with this person.
Yeah.
Like if this person shows up, I'm just happy to be with them. Because then you're surprised on the upside. And I think the opposite for me is true. When I expect a tremendous amount out of people and they come up short, I'm let down by somebody.
That's really good.
And that's probably like not a very fair with my kids, with my wife. You know what I mean? Like, I think.
So good.
Anyway, so good, Dougie. Love chatting with you. Let's make an annual thing. I think for me, what's fun about starting this journey with you with Legacy, I think it's going to take a decade. And that's just been my experience with businesses. It's always longer. It's always harder. And it'll be fun to see where we're at a year from now and see where we're at 2 years from now and implement
10 and 20.
And going through this. And so I'd love to kind of have it be an annual thing where we come back and check in and talk about what worked and what didn't and, what we've learned along the way.
I love it. Grateful for you, Casey.
Yeah,
and
you too.
Grateful for case studies. Super fun to see what you've done with it. Grateful to the other guests that you've had on the show. I love watching it and super, super grateful.
Thank you, my man.
Yep.
This podcast is brought to you by Sandlot Partners.